playing with microscopes even in her very early years. Her parents encouraged curiosity. Dr. Alona Sukhina is an Eastern European refugee who grew up in Tucson, lured there by extended family who fled to Arizona during the fall of the Soviet Union. She's a resident at PCH, working in endocrinology. She attended the University of Arizona both as an undergrad and for medical school. When her family moved to Arizona, they had to work very hard to survive. So Alona knows very well how some kids can be overlooked, fall through the cracks, or just not receive the medical care they might need. It set her on a track to ask a lot of questions, to peer more deeply into the issues that confront pediatricians, which may prove massively beneficial to children. She is focused on trying to figure out the consequences traumatic brain injuries might have on kids. Dr. Sukhina, please go ahead and tell us what we need to know.
I'd like to introduce you to Charlie. He was 6 months old when he experienced a traumatic brain injury due to abuse. Traumatic brain injury is also known as TBI for short. You can see this image of Charlie's brain that shows how severe his TBI was. The dark spot on the scan is the brain bleed caused from a skull fracture. He was treated here at PCH and discharged to a foster family. His foster mother noticed that he wasn't growing as well as his twin brother, so took him to the doctor and saw that his endocrine system or hormone system wasn't working properly. In fact, 1 out of 6 children who experience a moderate to severe TBI may develop hormone defects. Charlie was one of them. Many pediatricians are not trained to look for the hormone disorder after the TBI. The goal of this project is to help find those children. With your investment, it's possible to help PCH be the first in the world to develop guidelines so that pediatricians can help find these children too. How many children experience TBIs in the US every year? Nearly 500,000 in 2006, and not even 10 years later, the number almost doubled. If we extrapolate, that's about 16,000 children at PCH that year, and the numbers are growing still. I want to compare a TBI to something that most of us have in our lives, a smartphone. Pretend our brain is like our smartphone. We use different apps, some every day and some lay dormant and work in the background. Pretend those dormant apps are the endocrine system. They're necessary too. Now pretend our phone gets damaged. In other words, it gets a TBI. This would affect all apps, even the dormant ones. Just like what happens when children get a TBI, their entire systems can be affected, even their endocrine system. How exactly can TBIs affect the endocrine system? This animation shows the center hormone regulator of the body, the pituitary gland. If you put your finger right here in between your eyes and your second finger right here in front of your ear, where the 2 lines cross is exactly where the pituitary gland sits in your brain. You can see how easily it can get damaged during a TBI. The good news for adults is that they have guidelines that every adult who has a moderate to severe TBI gets screened at 6 and 12 months after their injury. But these guidelines are missing a third of the victims, and those are children. I'm sure you can all agree, children critically need their hormone system to help them grow and develop from babies to adults. If they get a TBI at any of these stages, they're at risk for stunted growth, puberty delay, or low thyroid. The good news is that we know how to treat these patients. All it takes is a blood draw and a trip to the endocrinologist, who regularly prescribes these medications. We just need to identify the children who are affected. Our team here at PCH has been working on this problem for the past 5 years by studying Arizona and PCH TBI survivors who have had experienced endocrine effects. We're able to publish our findings in 2 journals in the past year. And what did we find? Along with other things, kids who've had TBIs are 3 times more likely to experience endocrine defects compared to others who have not had a TBI. The only thing that's missing is identifying these patients in the clinic, and that's what this study is doing. It will involve taking a blood draw of 100 pediatric TBI survivors who are seen at Barrow Neurological Institute, identify which of those have endocrine disorders, and send them to the endocrinologist. We hope to identify 16 children And with this information, we can help PCH be the first in the world to develop clinical guidelines to inform pediatricians when to screen all children who've had a TBI. Just like Charlie, who you met in the beginning, we know these kids will be kids and are at risk for TBIs. With your help, we have the potential to ensure that they'll grow and thrive into the future. We're asking for an investment of $150,000. This is a collaboration between leading healthcare organizations of our community that will hopefully help us identify which kids will need to be seen and treated. With this, develop new guidelines and hopefully showcase that PCH is the leader of TBI and endocrine research around the world to help make it possible for thousands of children to thrive around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You talk about the broad impacts. So how does this translate to benefiting PCH when we talk about the dollars, the savings, and importantly, the patient care?
So we want to make sure that these kids aren't being missed. If a child gets a TBI and then develops an endocrine disorder but isn't caught, they can have puberty delay, weight gain, low thyroid, and those all need treatment. But the longer that it takes for them to be identified, the more expensive the treatment can be. It's better if we screen these children at specific times to see if they even have these disorders in the first place and catch them before they have severe symptoms.
How do the guidelines get shared and scaled to show impact?
So guidelines are something that are scrutinized around the world, and they're published by things like the American Academy of Pediatrics. Most pediatricians subscribe to these guidelines. But first we need to know, should these guidelines even exist? And so that's the question that our study is asking today. Dr. Oatman, Dr. Lifshitz, and his lab and I have been working on this problem for several years. And we hope that if our study holds true, we can show this data to the American Academy of Pediatrics and then apply for further funding, hopefully a multi-million-dollar grant, to gather even more data to publish those guidelines or publish that data as well, so that societies like the American Academy of Pediatrics can see that this is enough data to warrant publishing guidelines.
Why are you personally so passionate about this?
I want to make sure that kids are not missed for symptoms that seem to be like other disorders. These kids can present so ambiguously. They can present with weight gain, fatigue, headaches, and sometimes that's truly all that they have. But I want to make sure that we test them for endocrine disorders before it gets so bad that they have stunted growth or delayed puberty, and we catch these kids. And the beauty of these disorders is that we have the treatment already available, we just need to find the kids.
And how does this project potentially move toward changing what happens at the bedside of a patient?
So the first thing that we need to do is start writing the IRB or permission to draw blood from these patients. And then we will draw the blood, identify which patients need to be treated. And then if we do identify kids who have endocrine disorders, we can show that, yes, the majority of the patients had endocrine disorders at 6 months or at 12 months. Then we can say, if a child comes into your office as a pediatrician, they've had a severe TBI 6 months ago, today is the day that you screen them for an endocrine disorder. You get a blood draw, and then you see, are they positive or negative? You repeat the test in 12 months, let's say, for example, or in 6 months. That's what we're trying to find out.
All right, and it seems like our time is up. Thank you so much. Well done, Dr. Sukhina. Appreciate it.